first, how are you?
Yes, I'm really good, thank you. I'm really excited because this week's the week. Friday is the day that the album comes out, so it's like finally.
You're feeling good about it, of course. Debut album, Dark Light.
Very good about
Good. I'm glad to hear that. April 26th via New Heavy Sound. It's a long and winding road to release, isn't it? The drip feeding of content, sharing of details, all of that stuff that you kind of have to do, all while you're sitting on this complete record for likely some time. Do you enjoy this part of the process, this long and winding road?
Yeah, well, it's a really bittersweet experience in a way, but maybe not as dramatic as that. But it's quite stressful, I find. It's not stressful maybe in the way of the sort of the tasks that you have to do. It's very enjoyable. Obviously, it's sort of dream come true to make an album in a studio and have backing of people who believe in you and want to make something out of your music. But there's so much there's a lot of weight on that, I find. There's a lot of pressures, not just externally but internally too, to make sure. I don't know, because even the goals that I thought I wanted to achieve are still kind of becoming apparent to me as the album release date comes nearer. Things that I didn't even realize about myself, really, all my hopes, what I was hoping for, and how I'm reacting to people reacting to it. So it's like an ongoing journey. So it's a bit of both.
Do you almost just want to get to the stage where it's out, sent out into the world, walking its own 2 feet, and there's almost nothing else you can do at that stage?
Definitely, there's something quite relieving about um just just letting it be. And I've realized that as now sort of, because there's so many different elements to making an album, which is, there's artwork. The artwork itself is, there's a lot of back and forth there, so there's so many different aspects that are quite intense, sort of take quite a bit of work to do, that I don't think you actually ever stop to think about what's happening, or it's kind of nice now that it's all done, that I can enjoy the release with everyone else. So I think that is quite a nice thing, because I'm enjoying it with other people who hopefully are enjoying it. So as they're listening to it, I feel relaxed and I can actually just appreciate the work now. So I think that's actually quite a nice thing that happens with that, now that all the work's done until the next one.
Yeah, you can finally just sit and enjoy some of it. It's incredible. Is there a particular part, right, of the release process that I found you've enjoyed the most, though, that just really, really resonated with you?
It's got to be do you mean sort of the making of it, or,
Um, the this build part, this section where we're building up to it. So whether it be, I don't know, even making music videos, as you talked about, artwork, elements like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think so the most obviously enjoyable part is when you're recording the music in the studio, because it's hard to think past that at the time.
Mm.
And then sort of in the middle bit, I just find, yeah, I haven't really let myself be very relaxed, and as part of, to take time to enjoy. I don't want to say that I'm not enjoying myself, but as far as I found, even making music videos, I find really stressful. Um, and although I used to, when I used to dream about being in the position that I'm in now, the idea of making a music video to go along with your song is like, oh wow, how cool would that be? But again, that is a whole other world of, production, and especially because I'm not well versed in that world, it can be quite hard to artistically express what you want out of it. So I found a lot of it's the same with Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard. It was the same thing with those kinds of videos.
Mm.
Um, so just but with I've made the last video myself just on a windy day in the garden with my phone and just played around with a few things, and I finally felt like I enjoyed the experience. I just felt it's not perfect, and I'm not taking anything away from videographers and people who make music videos. It's so involved. It's, you know, I just don't have the brain capacity to do all of it myself like that.
Mm.
But to creatively get across the look that I wanted to, and I just knew what I wanted to do. I was like, well, I'm actually really enjoying this. So I had a lot of fun with that, actually.
Yeah, perfect for you, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, for those who don't know, you've mentioned that you are, of course, the vocalist of Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard and the chief architect of your new band I, and that is as in what you see with, not the letter I. So let's start by kind of focusing on when I first became a reality. Did you have a vision for exactly what you wanted to do at the time?
No, not really. I definitely had, well, I'll just go back to sort of my musical sort of journey and history. I'm a guitarist first. I studied contemporary jazz guitar. Um, so that was my main instrument. I wasn't even a singer. You know, that was all sort of like a happy accident, really. So I've always, even through Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard, I've always been writing and playing guitar and writing my own music anyway. Not necessarily released, but I've always been writing songs. Um, and I guess I always thought or knew at some point I'd love to do my own sort of project for my own sound. So I always had a sort of sound of the songs that I played, but I never quite found a way to translate that um, without it just being my by myself.
Hmm.
You know, it takes other musicians to come in, and they're, you know, other musicians that you pick are as important as yourself. It's not just about having, oh, you can play drums, you can be in the band, you can play bass, you can be in the band. You know, it's a very unique recipe of people who create a sound. And I just that through this whole time, I just never really found that magical soup of musicians, if you will. And then in lockdown, which happened to a lot of musicians, it's very, very rare to have that downtime where it's like, well, I could actually just let's have a mess around with some things, you know, without distraction.
Hmm.
Which are very, you know, quite fortunate. You know, not everybody was that fortunate, of course. So my partner, I got him an electric drum kit. So he was already really good at drums, so he kind of got into it. And our friend Johnny was really good at synths and keyboards, and we just started playing together. And I was like, this is it. This is it. This is the magical formula. The three of us, how it all worked out, and I just knew that was the sound that I had in my head, but I couldn't describe it to anyone of what it was that I wanted. So yeah, that's kind of how that came about.
It all just beautifully fell into place. And were they as enthusiastic as you were when it came to realizing that this is how you wanted it to be?
Definitely, they were such a big part of the push to sort of make it happen. It's, you know, it's just as important to surround yourself in any situation with encouraging people, you know, in any art form or anything that you do in life. So, yeah, they were really encouraging to me to do it, especially because I've been sitting on some of them for such a long time. you know, so that's you know, also an aspect of the right ingredients of a group. You know, I've been in some bands that have been almost a bit more of a toxic atmosphere, you know, and some personalities don't gel together. But it's just amazing how well just it's just the three of us, and and it's three for a reason. It's definitely less drama. So it's just a great combination, and we all just get on so well, and we have such a laugh, we have such a good time, and we play together really well. So yeah.
I swear there's something about the three, isn't there? It's a bit of a magic number.
Exactly.
Is it fair to say, and I guess this might be a bit difficult to really confirm from your perspective, is it fair to say that if lockdown hadn't happened, that this might not be reality, at least yet?
Yeah, possibly. I kind of think it probably would have eventually happened. It's yeah, it's kind of quite hard to say, isn't it, really?
Mm,
Because, you know, if we hadn't have had the time, because we as three sort of were we, you know, when you could have a bubble of people, you know, so that we were the bubble,
yeah.
you know, and we would have been hanging out anyway, and most likely, you know, well, we definitely would have jammed together and made music. But there was something about having the time and space to do it quite intensively, really helped propel the project into getting something started. Definitely, yeah.
Small positives from an incredibly negative period of time. It's always heartening to hear that anything good can come from that period.
Absolutely.
Is it also fair to say that Dark Light, it's not particularly confined to, say, one specific genre over another? Were you quite open to trying anything musically here?
Yeah. So I think this was another reason why I found it hard to um sort of start this project when I with my songs, is because I do like a very wide array of music. And I struggled to pin it down of which sort of, you know, especially if you're trying to market yourself as a musician, it is helpful to sort of fall under a genre in a way, because there's existing fan bases which support those kinds of genres. So you know, so if that is what your goal is, to be able to market something, it is beneficial to decide what your plan is in that
Hmm.
way. Um, I can't say that was necessarily what happened with I's first album. I kind of did a bit of it was very emotional writing, all of those songs, because it was happening in such an insane time. Um, so it's all very genuine music. And I think that the album kind of did follow, um, you know, the river of those emotions through that time, and that's sort of how that translates. As much as where I thought I it would go in a genre way or marketing way, I actually had no idea, because I know fans may have expect of Mammoth Weed may have expected something quite similar. And there was elements of that on there. You know, there's
Of course.
you know, some like heavy bits, and obviously my vocals are my vocals. They, you know, kind of sound similar. Um, but yeah, that was it was sort of it kind of took on its own thing. And I think it being released is going to be very telling for me personally to help me see which direction I actually want to go in, I think. Yeah.
Well, saying that, obviously, I know this and what you've described there as well, and I think anybody that's heard the single so far knows this. I is not Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard. Are you pleased with the reaction you received from the singles of I so far? Particularly, I guess, from those who are saying they're fans of Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard.
Yeah, really am. I'm quite even surprised, not, you know, yeah, I was quite humbled, I think is the word, that I felt. It's hard to know, it's hard to gauge in the early days. It's easy, I mean, when your album's been out for a little while, then you can sort of tell. But the first two songs that we've released so far, but the most thing that's been promoted are the two videos you've made on YouTube, and they seem to be doing, there's more thousands of views every day, it seems, which I was so happy to see. Um, you know, I guess time will tell. I know that some Mammoth Weed fans would be maybe hoping for something similar, and it's just not their cup of tea, which is completely understandable. And other people may still like the ethereal side of things. I kind of like to think of I as Mammoth Weed, sort of maybe like little sister in a way, or something. Maybe if you don't just want to listen to riffs and you want to have a bit more chill, I could fit into that a bit. So yeah, I'm really humbled at the response so far, and it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens when the album comes out. But we'll definitely be we're already thinking ahead about the second one, and that will be, I feel like I'm already ready to know which direction I kind of want to go in, and it's probably be a bit more refined in some ways. Yeah.
That's really interesting because, of course, with this debut album, Dark Light, some of these ideas go back a long time, right? In some cases, pre Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard. With the earlier stuff, was it quite difficult to go back to an idea that didn't necessarily represent who you are now?
Yeah, I guess. I don't think so, because I feel like all of those sort of songs or emotions, or say like riffs or just little pieces of music that you write and pick up as you go through life, are always still a big part of you. There's something quite magical about piecing together all of these little bits that you've maybe written over time, piecing them together into a song. Sometimes that's sort of like the magic of writing, really. Sometimes you sit down with a guitar and then an entire song and all lyrics just come out. And that is like hardly ever happens for me anyway. That's like a really good day if that happens. But most of them are pieces picked up over the years and pieced together. And the feeling when you had a thing that you really liked for years, and then you're like, oh, that fits in really well there. It's a great feeling. And then, of course, not forgetting the contribution of your band members, their bits of music. That's the really fun part, I find, is piecing together all of those little pieces of music and things. Yeah.
Did you find yourself quite comfortable with having others cast a critical eye over things you had written years before?
Yeah, I personally really welcomed their input. When you have that's a big part of deciding who it is that you want to do music with, because you are letting them into a space where you might hold very sacred some parts of, maybe bits of music that you write. And it's not like necessarily always plain sailing. You're bound to like butt heads on opinions and things like that, but that's the whole process of picking musicians. It's because you trust them, you trust that they'll come up with something good that you'll probably like. And you trust them to respect your opinion, and vice versa. So it really is like being in a relationship. I've always said that being in Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard was like having loads of nightmare boyfriends. It's like, it's you have to, it's a delicate dance around in feelings and everything like that. But if you trust each other and you're in the right, you're with the right people, then it's okay to, you feel okay to work with them musically like that.
Well put. And like all relationships, you'll win some, you lose some. The idea is hopefully you'll reach a compromise.
Exactly.
Is it fair to look at the album overall as a kind of growth album? The life and times of Jessica Ball, loosely speaking, not just from a musical perspective, but a personal one.
Oh yeah, most definitely. That's very well put. I would think, like we mentioned before, it's just all bits and pieces of lyrics, chords, little bits, little jingles you record in your phone that remind you of a time. It does all sort of, yeah, it does all create like a bit of a picture, for me anyway. Yeah.
I almost imagine over the years and then, getting all that and putting it together in some semblance of of sense. It must have been quite challenging to begin with, was it?
Um, uh, in what way do you mean sort of making this?
Just all those ideas you've collected over the years and finding what would eventually be this album. Um, it's so it's so big, so many things
Mhm.
going on.
Yeah, I would definitely, a challenge is a good word, but it's a challenge, it's a positive challenge rather than in a negative way. And that I find that to be my most enjoyable part of the process. And it doesn't come without frustration because sometimes you'll have maybe really good verses, but the chorus just isn't, it's just not, you just can't get anything and you're just trying everything. That can happen. So there's definitely different sort of aspects to the challenge in that way. But that's just my favorite part. If somebody says to me, here you go and record an album, that's, I'm absolutely in my element there. I love that. Yeah.
Is that then when you reflect on the entire experience of making the album a reality, memories that you look upon fondly, is that the studio time the one you look upon the most fondest?
I think so. Yeah, I think so, definitely. It's not a place you usually find yourself. It was almost a little bit what we were saying about before about having being lucky enough to be able to spend some time in lockdown without distraction. Being in the studio it's such a rare occurrence in life where you sort of, it's kind of like being on holiday where you switch your phone off, you have no distractions and you just do what you want every day. Recording an album in a studio is just like that. You're in a completely different location and all you have to do, especially if you go to a residential studio and you stay there for a week or 10 days, all you have to
Mm.
do is wake up and go and make music. And that's just, you know, you don't forget times like that. And you're with the people who you love being with, sharing that experience. So that is definitely my favorite part, I reckon.
I don't think I've ever heard any artist or band compare it to a holiday though. Talk to me about working with producer Chris Fielding. How much of an effect did his work have in your vision for the record?
Like a lot. I absolutely love working with Chris. And it wasn't in any way accidental to work with Chris. It was the first and only person I thought about to do this album with because obviously we recorded quite a few all albums. He's been involved in all Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard albums. And vocally he works really well with me. He's such a great producer and he's really able to guide me vocally in a way, because when you're singing, when you know it's a whole day of singing and you've got your headphones on, it can be quite hard to hear very fine harmonies or things, so he's always there to help suggest things. And he's just a dead easygoing nice person to work with. So he was the first choice, absolutely, and everybody else obviously loved him and got on with him really well. So he was a big part of you know, making it so easy and nice for us to come together. And obviously he's got great suggestions for sound. You know, he makes the drums sound phenomenal. You know, he's just great all round. Mm.
It's fantastic to hear. From a creative standpoint, what are you getting from I that you don't necessarily get from Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard?
Yeah, I think if I could say I'm getting more creative a bit from I than I am with Mammoth Weed, you know, quite obviously because I'm sort of writing the songs mainly in I. It was a bit more of a collaborative effort in Mammoth Weed, but also our Dave, well, we call him Dave. His name is Paul Michael Davis. He was the sort of main riff writer, you know, so I kind of viewed it a bit more as his baby, if you will. Which is great because you know, that's totally what that needed, and that totally worked. You know, every band I personally feel needs a sort of like a leader, you know, if you will. So I enjoyed what I did, but the responsibility didn't fall as heavily on my shoulders as it did on his shoulders. Whereas with it does. It feels like it's mostly on my shoulders, which I find quite fulfilling actually a lot more. Yeah, so that's what, yeah.
You're happy to be in that situation because obviously when you say almost the terminology, it falls on your shoulders has a negative connotation, but the fact that it's coming from such a positive angle for
Mhm.
you is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it gives you it encourages you to do something, you know, it's a positive pressure, not a negative one.
Fantastic to hear. What one song from the album that hasn't been released yet are you particularly interested in seeing the reaction to, and why?
Um, yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that there's the second last song on the album is called See Yourself. That's it's almost two parts. So the first part is very dreamy and very sort of slow. There's no standard sort of song structure there. And then halfway through there's a wall of sound just comes through and hopefully surprises everyone. It's not gonna be a surprise now. But but yeah, we went for the wall. We tried to do the wall of sound on that one. It is layer upon layer upon layer of everything that we could possibly find. It's not going to be, you know, it's not radio friendly in any way. It's not going to be your next smash hit, but I think we're all particularly proud of that song. So it might be something a bit more for the Mammoth Weed fans too there. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
Oh, for sure. I know exactly what you're talking about. It is a phenomenal track, but it's a phenomenal release, the kind of thing you want to get immersed in. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've just come off a week of night shifts at 3 o'clock in the morning. There is nothing better to listen to than Dark Light to be
Oh,
immersed.
great.
And last one then for you, Jessica. What do you hope, what would you like listeners to take from Dark Light overall?
That's a good question. I don't suppose I've actually thought about that yet. I did find that the album as a whole and sort of individual songs, both lyrically and musically, are quite ambiguous. You can almost fit it into quite a few situations if you wanted to for yourself. You know, the whole album is based around light and dark, sun and moon, opposites of things, which I always find fascinating to think about. You know, civilizations have been obsessed for thousands of years with the sun and the moon. You know, it holds that kind of power, even if you're not necessarily spiritual or religious. I personally am not, but I do find fascination and power in those kinds of light and dark, you know. So if you're going through like a light period or a dark period, it could mean so many different things to different people. So I feel like the album could fit in to a lot of people's lives in different ways, depending on how they want it to. And I quite enjoy writing like that. So yeah, it could be a very personal experience. So it'll be interesting to see overall what that response is.
What an incredible way to put it. Because I see it almost as a mood album as well. If I imagine I listened to it, if I had a bad day and was in a foul mood and I listened to it then, but the next day I was I was happy, I was chill, whatever. I feel like I know I would get two different things from
Yeah,
it.
that's great. Yeah, that's good.
Well, it is Dark Light and it is out on April 26th, this Friday as of the time recording via New Heavy Sounds. Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate your time.
Fantastic. It's so great to talk to you, and thanks for giving me a chance to blab about the album.
Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.